Welcome to Chapter 13, Deployment. We've just begun a new part of the course and opened up notebook number 13. In this chapter, we're going to learn how to deploy our application on a remote server. So I think this is a really exciting part of the course. We've completed our application, we can run it locally, and now we're going to deploy it on this remote server so that any person anywhere in the world can view it as long as they have a connection to the internet. So I'm going to show you two options here. One is with a company called Python Anywhere. This is a simple and free solution. Then I'm going to show you a bit more complex option. That's by setting up your own Ubuntu server with a company called Vultr. This will be low cost and it end up being around $3.50 per month. This is part one. What is a web server? Thus far, we are the only ones that can access our dashboard, and that's by visiting the local host. Nobody else can view it. If we want others to view our dashboard, then we need to serve our website to clients that request it using the HTTP protocol. So there are several terms in here that I want to define so that everybody is on the same page. So to serve is the transferring of files such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, and others from the server to the client. So now we need to understand what is a server and what is a client. So a server is a machine that's running the web server software and hosting the files to be served to the client. So over here on the server, we have our files for our dashboard, like dashboard.py, update.py, models.py. We also have the CSS file, the images, any other HTML files or JavaScript files. They're going to be stored on this web server, on this machine over here. It also has this software over here, this web server software, and it's usually going to be Apache 2 or Nginx. These are two of the most popular web server softwares, and it's going to use that software to handle these incoming requests from the client and then respond to the client with the data that it has requested. Okay, so the client is the user. Typically this is you, but it could be just any other machine, and it's the machine making the request. For us, it's typically from a web browser, and whenever we visit a website, it could be any website, but if we're visiting, say, our coronavirus forecasting dashboard, it'll make a request to the server, and the server will respond with the HTML and JavaScript and CSS that our browser will then use to display the dashboard right in front of us. So what is a request? So this is the way the client literally requests information. So, but that's the technical term. It's called a request. And it's a specific message that the client sends to the server to take an action. So the message is defined precisely by this HTTP protocol. So it has to follow some specific protocol. And if the protocol is followed correctly, then the server will understand it and will be able to respond with the correct information that the client is requesting. So there are many different types of requests. It's not just a single type. You might have heard of these, GET and POST, but there are several other types of requests. So this HTTP protocol, we're not going to get into it, but it's just a specific, it's just a specific type of, specific way to make a request. And the last thing over here is once the server receives this request, it has to handle it. So if the server knows how to handle it and the request is done properly, then it will make a response, which is usually some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to sending back to the client. There's also a status code here to inform the client on how the request was handled. So 200 is usually, or it does mean that everything is okay. 404 is there's some sort of error. 500 means there's like a server error, so there was like some code that was not working in dashboard.py or something. So this image, I believe, really helps out to understand what's going on between server and client and these common terms over here that's used when talking about web servers. Okay, so where are these web servers and how do I get one? Number one is that really any computer connected to the internet can work as a web server. So even your local machine can act as a web server, but that's typically not done. You have to have your machine up at all times and be able to handle possibly thousands of requests if you have a popular website. So that's not a common solution. So most often what happens is that you'll rent a computer from a company to use as a web server. So many companies, there's dozens or thousands probably of companies that have these servers that you can rent, and then you load your files on there, you set up the web server software, and then people can come and visit your website and view the content. They can make requests and then get responses like that. So here's some companies that do this. I'm just going to start with the biggest three. So Amazon with Amazon Web Services, more commonly referred to as AWS. Microsoft has something called Azure. Google has Google Cloud. Vultr might be something that a company you have not heard of. It is very simple and cheap. So these companies all have a lot of overhead with the amount of services they offer. There's dozens and dozens of services in here, and to me, it's a little bit overwhelming to work with all these services. They have to help automate things, but in the end, I think it's a better solution to set something up yourself and just have full control. And that's what we'll do with Vultr. It's also quite cheap, and I think it is a good solution. Okay, so how will you end up controlling this web server? Well, all of these companies provide access to the server. Obviously, you need control of it to set things up. So sometimes there's an online console, like from the website itself, or what you can do is just you can log in to the server from your local machine using something called a secure shell. So we will cover this. We'll SSH into our server and then run commands on it from there. Okay, so that covers the basics of what a web server is.